Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have an awesome show. I owe you some NFL truths. I owe you some football talk, and we're going to give it to you today. Danny Kannell is going to join me. Steve Kim's going to join me. I'm going to unpack the NFL truths today, and then I believe Danny Kannell will come on after that. Yeah, Danny Kannell. And then our main man, Steve Kim, will close out the show. So we'll cover the NFL, we'll cover college football, we'll cover everything. Last night, a very interesting Monday Night Football game. We'll get into that with both Steve and Danny Kannell. The Detroit Lions last night proving something significant, and maybe Derrick Henry and the Baltimore Ravens proved something as well, something not as positive. Before I get into these NFL truths, because we're on a tight schedule, let me remind you all that are listening over Apple, I need you to give me that 5-star review. Hit that 5-star rating. We need it. It helps us fight the algorithm. It helps us grow this show. So please do that. If you're watching over YouTube, hit the likes, hit the subscribe. Tell your friends and family to come watch it. If you want to hear about the sports world and about the world from a biblical point of view, we got you covered right here. We got some jokes. We got everything mixed in that for you to have a good time in the morning, get your worldview fed, and, you get to deal with me. You get to see me every day. You hear my nose is a little fuzzy or stuffed up, but we're going to soldier through. I want to thank our friends at Craft Co. Flying Ace Spirits for making today's show possible. If you've had one bourbon, you've had them all, right? That's what you think, but you're wrong. Flying Ace Straight Bourbon doesn't just check the usual boxes, it rewrites them. This is a blend of carefully aged bourbon selected not for marketing hype, but for taste. What you get is a smooth, full-bodied sip with real character. You'll catch notes of caramel, vanilla, toasted spice, and just the right hint of fruit. It's bold without being harsh. It's complex, but not complicated. No smoke, no mirrors, just a really good bourbon that delivers on every pour. If you're looking for something new that actually lives up to the hype, this is it. Order online at flyingacespirits.com. Use the promo code BLAZE for free shipping. I'm going to do it today because, we're about finally going to have my housewarming party, and we're going to serve some Flying Ace Spirits at my housewarming party. So I'll be online shopping today for some Flying Ace Spirits to make sure that all of my guests have a good time. All right, let's get into the NFL truths.
You can't handle the truth.
Yes, you can, and I'm going to give it to you. Let's start with number 10. The best unit in football is the Cleveland defense. Yes, that defense that just embarrassed the Green Bay Packers. And the best player in football is Myles Garrett. If the Browns win 9 games this season, Myles Garrett should get heavy consideration for MVP. Is that how you do it? Anyway, YMCA, MVP, whatever. All right, let's move to number 9. And John Hadley's guy, Baker Mayfield, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, I'm going to give Baker Mayfield his flowers. He's led Tampa Bay to 3 straight late-game victories. But I want to use those flowers to bury the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're not for real. Atlanta, Houston, and the Jets have 1 victory between them. Those are the 3 teams the Buccaneers have beaten. All right, let's move to number 8, the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, they need to consider doing Nick Saban 2.0. Yes, you heard me. They need to run it back with Nick Saban. He's had a good relationship with Tua Tagovailoa, the failed franchise quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. Saban would cleanse the notion that the organization is soft and is incapable of building it, and Nick Saban's capable of building a terrific coaching staff. Nick Saban is who they should be considering in Miami when they're finally done with Mike McDaniel. All right, let's move to number 7. Carson Wentz, Daniel Jones, Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold, and Mac Jones. They all won games over the weekend. This personifies the state of QBs in modern day football. I'm going to put a different spin on this. You think I'm talking down on them? No, this isn't about a lack of talent. These guys having these second careers or catching their second win speak to the lack of development in this league. These guys could have been developed with the teams that they originated with, but that's not what we do in the NFL anymore. All right, let's move to number 6, I believe. Yeah, number 6, Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones. Guess what? I'd rather have Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones, the quarterback-running back combination in Indianapolis. I'd rather have Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts, the quarterback combination in Philadelphia, rather than Josh Allen or Justin Herbert. You heard, I'd rather have those quarterbacks and running backs in combination than the two guys that I believe are playing the quarterback position the best right now, Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. The NFL has done everything in its power to diminish the running back position. Cannot be done. I honestly believe the running back position is having a renaissance, and it's the most important position in football, obviously, other than the quarterback. That's not how they're paid. That's not how running backs are paid. They're paid like they're damn near punters or kickers. All right, let me move to NFL truth number 5. Look, I want to have a moment of silence, and could we cut the music briefly? I want to have a moment of silence for the LA Rams bettors. Let's please bow your head. Yeah. What happened to LA Rams bettors over the weekend, I've never seen anything more painful than the backdoor cover that the Philadelphia Eagles got with the blocked field goal and return for touchdown with no time on the clock. A defensive tackle, what's the guy, Jordan Davis or something like that, ran it all the way back for a TD, giving Philadelphia the cover. Thoughts and prayers with you LA Rams bettors. All right, let's move to NFL truth number 4. The Jets, Dolphins, Titans, Saints, they all walk into a locker room. How would you identify the worst team? Go back. The Jets, Dolphins, Titans, and Saints, all winless, all trash. I sat around this morning trying to figure out which one of these teams I think is the worst. I couldn't do it. I legitimately couldn't do it. I got things I hate about both teams, all 4 teams. I can't tell. We'll find out by the end of it. They're all candidates to go 0-17. All right, let's move to NFL truth number 3. The Texans, they're winless, and they're 5-9 in their last 14 games. Who's under more pressure? Franchise quarterback C.J. Stroud or head coach DeMeco Ryans? I think it's C.J. Stroud. Firing a black quarterback is easier than firing a black coach. Half the league has black starting quarterbacks. There's only, 3, 4, 5 black head coaches in the NFL. Ryan Clark would have a conniption fit if DeMeco Ryans or any of these black coaches got fired. So, C.J. Stroud, you're on the clock, buddy. All right, NFL truth number 2, Derrick Henry. I love Derrick Henry. He's one of my favorite players. I've got him headed for the top 10 all-time running backs list. But this is just a personal pet peeve of mine. I can't stand this big gold chain that this dude wears and this gold grill he wears during games. He dresses up like a clown, and now he's playing like one. His next fumble in Baltimore will likely be his last. He's had 3 in 3 games, and they've been critical. The Baltimore Ravens are 1-2, and partially it's because Derrick Henry can't hold on to the football. NFL truth number 1. NFL truth number 1, and I don't think I'm moving off on this. The Indianapolis Colts with Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor and that defense, they're a legitimate threat to win the Super Bowl. Yeah, I said it, and I mean it. The Indianapolis Colts, my hometown Indianapolis Colts, threat to win the Super Bowl. All right, that's your NFL truths for week number 3. Thank you for playing. Thank you for playing along. Danny Kannell is just around the corner. Before I get to Danny, I want to thank Beam Organic Products. It's what I've been using to help me sleep, and I certainly needed it last night because my sinuses are just in a bad place. So thank God for Beam. That's, I discovered Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values: hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients, including reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. Plus, Dream tastes incredible, and it's become a part of my nightly routine. Simple, easy, and effective. Here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/fearless. Use the promo code fearless at checkout. That's shopbeam, BEAM.com/fearless. Use the promo code fearless for up to 40% off. Sleep better, wake up stronger, and show up ready for your family, your work, and your country. Because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable. And this country needs more people like that. All right, don't go anywhere. Our man, Danny Kannell, next. Did you hear about Adam Schefter's report about Shedeur Sanders told the Baltimore Ravens, don't draft me. Don't draft me at number 141. They were like 3 picks before the Cleveland Browns. The Baltimore Ravens were going to draft Shedeur. They called Shedeur before doing that. And Shedeur told them, nah, I don't want to sit behind Lamar Jackson. I want to be in a place where there's more of an opportunity to play. This kid's brain dead. This kid has been badly mentored by his father. This kid's ego is out of control. This kid has no idea what he passed up. The Cleveland Browns are one of the worst franchises in all of sports. One of the worst run franchises. They're a laughingstock. The Baltimore Ravens are considered one of the premier franchises in all of sports. This dude could have been mentored by Lamar Jackson. All right, welcome back. Time for the latest addition to the Fearless Army. Danny Kannell, former Florida State quarterback, former, I believe, ACC Player of the Year, former NFL player, and now a regular, a host at CBS Sports, does his own podcast as well. Danny Kannell is any and everywhere. He's ubiquitous when it comes to talking football. Danny, let's start with Monday night. And I think one of the things that I felt like I learned last night that I was skeptical of, I thought Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn leaving the Detroit Lions was going to really undermine the Detroit Lions because I was still a tiny bit skeptical of Dan Campbell, and now I'm not. I think Dan Campbell is the real deal, and we have to start giving him some real credit for what they built in Detroit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that was one of the biggest question marks all offseason was how is he going to do losing both coordinators? And it's kind of unique because usually don't see that happen unless it's a Super Bowl winning team, like that you actually lose, both coordinators, and they fell short of that. And because of the pedigree that both those coaches came with. Like Aaron Glenn was one of the hottest hires out there, and so was Ben Johnson. But I think the thing that Dan Campbell it overhauls all of that. It kind of supersedes all of that is a very clear identity. And I think it's a very unique situation. I've often felt like coaches that fit best with a city and kind of their identity fits with what the city does can be a very unique, special type of relationship. And from the minute Dan Campbell walks into that building in Detroit and takes over a franchise which has been abysmal, right? They've been just sort of a laughingstock of the NFL. He embraced the working class atmosphere, the blue collar mindset. We're going to be a tough, hard-nosed, gritty football team. And I think it really resonates in that locker room. And that would not resonate in every city. It would not resonate in every locker room. But he's got the buy-in from the players on the Detroit Lions so that when you're faced with adversity and you have another setback and you lose a lot of pieces and you have to draft some rookie offensive linemen, they all sort of just look at it and say, well, we're just going to go back to work. And that's all the way they look at it. They don't see adversity. They see opportunity and they see work. And I think it's one of the hardest working, mentally tough teams in the NFL. So I think Dan Campbell deserves a ton of credit for the job that he's done.
Let's look at some of the high-profile coaches that don't have Super Bowls. Kyle Shanahan would be on that list. Jim Harbaugh would be on that list. Sean McDermott would be on that list. And obviously now I'm putting Dan Campbell on that list. Where do you think he ranks in that list of high-profile coaches, no Super Bowl?
So I think you have to consider where these coaches are and like what they inherit. Kyle Shanahan goes to the 49ers. It's a tradition-rich franchise that's had so much success, ton of history. He inherited a pretty good roster. This one you had to build up a little bit more. And I do think there's some commonalities in some of these. I thought John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have done a really good job building that together. And I do think Brad Holmes deserves a ton of credit for the roster that they've built. And for the most part, kept their players that they've wanted to keep. And to go out and get a Jared Goff on the trash heap when he's sort of cast aside and Brad Holmes came from LA and was like, all right, we think we can win with him. That's another pretty unique aspect to this. I mean, the other quarterbacks that we've had, now that's where I think Kyle Shanahan deserves a ton of credit for Brock Purdy, but that very much remains to be seen, the success of that one. So I think Dan Campbell, because of where he's done, like you have to think of the hurdles. Tell me what player would sign up and be like, yeah, I want to go to Detroit. Like not many players are signing up to go play in a cold weather city that's not the most fun to live to year round. Buffalo's another tricky one, but Sean McDermott has one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now in Josh Allen and still hasn't made it to a Super Bowl either. So I'd probably put Kyle Shanahan at the top list because he's been there and he's been a little bit closer. Maybe with Jim Harbaugh, we'll see what he does this season because the Chargers are off to a sensational start. And if he kind of just replicates his blueprint everywhere he's been and starts running the football and develops Justin Herbert and has similar to what Dan Campbell has, a physically tough team that's sort of that hard-nosed, old-school mentality, I think Harbaugh's in there. But I would probably put Kyle Shanahan a little bit ahead. Maybe I'm more of an offensive-minded, kind of play caller type of mindset. I sort of look to that and the ability of what he's done with Brock Purdy. But I think Dan Campbell is probably number 2.
Any takeaways, any real concerns for the Baltimore Ravens after last night? Did we learn anything about them?
They were my Super Bowl pick coming into the season, and after what transpired in Buffalo earlier this season, collapsing in that game, then last night, losing that game against Detroit. That was actually my Super Bowl matchup, was the Detroit Lions against the Ravens. So I thought the game would be close, but you mentioned Derrick Henry, sort of disappointing, some of the turnovers that started so far. I think those were two great teams. Like it's not ready for me to panic yet. I do think Lamar takes that step forward. He was great. I mean, he sort of always is. He has to do it in the postseason to silence any of his critics because in the regular season, he's been phenomenal. But I'd say my concerns are probably with the Baltimore defense. Like when is this defense going to step up and start getting some stops? Because we know they can score, but at some point you got to get off the field.
All right, the other team that I'm super big on, and I'm from Indianapolis, although I've never been a Colts fan. They weren't there when I was growing up. But, man, I look at them, and to me, they're a different kind of version of the Detroit Lions. They have a strong running game with Jonathan Taylor, and they have a former high-round quarterback that the Giants gave up on, and Steichen and the Colts are getting the most out of. And I love the addition of the tight end from Penn State, Warren. I take the Indianapolis Colts very, very seriously and would not – I think they're capable of making a Super Bowl run. That's not my pick, but, man, I'm really buying the Indianapolis Colts. What are you seeing?
I agree as long as Jonathan Taylor stays healthy. Like, I do think Daniel Jones, and this is somebody who's watched him a lot. You know, I always sort of watch the Giants and keep an eye on them as a team that drafted me, gave me an opportunity. And that was sort of Daniel Jones' biggest knock was, well, when Saquon Barkley got hurt, his numbers dropped off dramatically. So I would say that's like a utmost priority, but that happens for a lot of teams. I love this story for Daniel Jones. I thought this was the perfect spot for him because I was not a believer in Anthony Richardson. I guarantee you Daniel Richardson was looking across the landscape of places he could either be a backup or he could compete for a starting job. And he looked at Indy and circled that and said, you know what? I can see the field early. And sure enough, he wins the starting job and he's taken advantage of it. And I think sometimes for any quarterback, and we've seen this sort of being a recurring theme with guys like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith. There's a lot of guys where it didn't work out in the first stop. They just need to kind of get out of an organization. Sometimes the own fan base can become toxic. Sometimes it's mental, and you just get a fresh start and a change of scenery, and you can go back there and play more relaxed. Daniel Jones playing with a ton of confidence. He's always had the skill set. I mean, we've seen him take the Giants to a playoff game and get a playoff win. So he's got the arm. To me, it's about mentally, can he handle the success? And most importantly, can he handle the adversity? Like, what happens? Like, it's easy for everybody to play from a front-running position, right? I always look to quarterbacks and say, what do you do when you do have a 3-interception game and when you've lost 2 games in a row and your fan base is questioning, are you the right guy for the spot? What do you do after then? So Daniel Jones has looked awesome, but I kind of want to see how they play when he doesn't perform at his best and how does he bounce back after a bad game. But I think they're the best team in the division. Like, I'm not buying into Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, to me, has been a disappointment in his career so far. So I still look very much at that. The Texans have been abysmal, and the Titans aren't going to make a run. So I think they're going to win their division. And if you get a home game, I played in 2 playoff games when I was in the Broncos. I wasn't starting, but Indy is a nasty place to go into. And you talk about a fan base that would love to see and back and support a quarterback like Daniel Jones. I wouldn't want to go there if I'm any AFC team to go for a playoff game.
Danny, you mentioned something that I'm going to veer off course a little bit, and then I'm going to circle back to what I wanted to follow up with you about. But you mentioned the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that made me think of Travis Hunter. And Coach JB was on the show last week, and he went off on Travis Hunter and said he's a bust. And you know, I can't fully disagree, but I'm just wondering, my position is, hey, man, this guy's got to choose one side of the ball and perfect that craft. This is insanity, a rookie trying to be a two-way player, and that's why he's getting, for him, mediocre results for his level of talent on both sides of the ball. Are you seeing anything with Travis Hunter? Are you ready to go where Coach JB's going, that he's a bust?
No, I'm not going to go for a bust yet. We've only seen a handful of games. It's way too early for that. I will say that something that some people brought up, I loved it. I loved his story. I'm somebody who played multiple sports in high school. When I played baseball, I wanted to be a pitcher and a hitter. I'm a huge fan of Shohei Ohtani. Like, I like seeing athletes be athletes, but we are talking about the greatest level of football in the world, and it's never been done before for anybody to do it full time, really, in the past 50 years. So granted, I knew it was going to be a huge challenge. I thought he was up for it. Like, the guy cardiovascularly is insane. Like, he can run up and down the field all day long. Mentally, I think that's probably where he's struggling to get a grasp of both sides. But I think most importantly, I think is the physicality of the game. He's not the most muscular guy. He's not the strongest guy on the outside. And that was the one knock that I heard people get against him coming out in the draft was, how's he going to be able to handle the physicality of the bigger wide receivers when he's playing defense? And then on the flip side, how is he going to handle the bigger defensive backs that he's going to have to go against? And then the question becomes, all right, if he does after the season have to bulk up and he has to put on weight, how does that impact his quickness, his performance, his ability to move around as athletically as he has? But I do think this is one where you probably have to do some reevaluation on the fly to make sure you do put him into a position to succeed, because he does look a little bit overwhelmed right now. I would probably say, you know what, let's put him on the offensive side of the ball. Let's have him just do wide receiver, and let's hold off on the defensive side of the ball. And that's me selfishly as a quarterback. And I think some of the physicality stuff doesn't become so much of an issue. The defense, I would probably hold off on and say, all right, let's table that. But remember, this organization made a massive move in the draft specifically to say, we're going to use him both ways. And that was really the only way you could justify going up and get Travis Hunter and giving up what they got. So I think there's some pressure even internally from the front office to keep him going both ways. At the very least, I think you have to sort of pull back on what you've been asking him to do. I root for him because I want to see something special like this happen. But maybe that's where I kind of start overlooking some of the hurdles that he's going to have to overcome.
I just think everyone talks about cardiovascularly. He could do it, and he did it at Colorado. He did it at Jackson State. Look, man, when you have that much talent and you're playing at Jackson State, you can take several plays off. You might even be able to take a series or two off while on the field. At Colorado, you can rest on the field, given that Big 12 schedule and the schedule they were playing. There is no rest in the NFL. You can go play the Cleveland Browns. Everybody thinks they're one of the worst teams, and they think the Packers are the best team. And Myles Garrett and these guys will come out there and thump you and steal your lunch money. There's no rest in the NFL. Any guy that takes that field can embarrass you. I think it's just way too much to ask of Travis Hunter. And I think, and people will hear this, man, Whitlock looks for every opportunity to criticize Deion, but I'm just keeping it real. When Deion's your mentor and Deion leads with ego, and then he talks you into leading with your ego and making history and doing something no one's ever done. And I did, man, they talked this kid into a hot mess, and he's put too much pressure on himself, and you can lose. The football is a game of confidence as well, and they're risking this guy's confidence. That's what I would be concerned about.
Yeah, it definitely comes into play. It's interesting because if you go back and look at the guys who did it, Deion included, it was a very small package on offense. He would basically go out there and run a post or a reverse, and he did some special team stuff too. It was incredible as a returner. A true story, when I was on the Giants, Jason Sehorn was the last great white hope at defensive back who was a stud. And we were buddies, we were roommates. I used to go in there and I'd beg Jim Fossil, our coach, to let him catch passes. Like, hey, let's put him, like you wanted to use that weapon. And you know what? They actually let him return kicks in the preseason, and the first kick he returned tore his ACL, and he never was really the same. To your point about the brutality of the league, it does take its toll on your body, and I think they're starting to find out just how much of a challenge this could be. I'm not ready to call it a bust yet, but it is starting to look like it's going to be way more challenging than even I thought for what is an incredible athlete.
I'm going to go back to Indianapolis and Detroit and Philadelphia. These are three teams that I think have great running games, great running backs, and the NFL has tried to diminish the running back position year after year after year. I think it's a joke. I think that's the cheat code that Dan Campbell has tapped into. I think it's what the Philadelphia Eagles have tapped into. Is the Lions, what they run the ball maybe 38 times last night and just took Lamar off the field. I think Troy Aikman said at halftime they had 21 snaps, and he only had 9 opportunities to throw the football. This running game deal, you're never going to remove it from football. And we've diminished these great running backs and pretended like they have no value. Look, everybody knows Philly wouldn't have a Super Bowl and Jalen Hurts wouldn't have a Super Bowl without Saquon Barkley. And I look at, again, the Colts. I look at the Lions last night. Football is still a game of imposing your will, and there's no better way to do it. And we saw in the first quarter last night, I don't know how close you were watching, Danny, but in the first quarter, the Lions couldn't get their running game going. They were getting dominated in the first quarter, and they just stuck with it. And then next thing you know, David Montgomery's just having his way with them. I love a team with a great running game, and so I'm looking for my Super Bowl favorite, and it's going to be one of these running teams.
So I think two things are very true in the NFL. I think one, I think it's cyclical. I think things kind of cycle through. And the other, I think, is this copycat league. So hear me out on this, on how this plays out. Because when the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes were throwing for 50 touchdown passes and they had Tyreek and they were the big play machine, everyone in the NFL was trying to chase the big chunk plays. Like, that's what everyone was looking for. Everyone was copycatting that mantra, that style of play to get because that's the quickest way. You don't have to go on long 12, 13 play drives. You hit them quick. You get that big touchdown. It can be devastating to a defense. So then on the flip side, defenses start to defend, and they start to defend for that big play. And so you've seen a lot of shell coverage, too deep coverage where they're keeping everybody in front of you. Well, what do you do to get out of that? You run the football. And so I think some teams, to your point, have noticed, because a lot of people are doing the same things in the NFL, and everyone starts to defend, as the Bills. Think of all the big play offenses, the Bengals, especially in the AFC with the good quarterbacks. They've been throwing the ball down the field. So when they're playing against each other, they have similar defensive schemes. And then personnel, you start drafting guys to stop the pass game and the explosive weapons down the field. Well, as you're doing that, guess what you're becoming vulnerable to? You're becoming vulnerable to the physical aspect of the game. So I think a couple teams have seen this opportunity to get physical again. And I'm with you. I love the return of the running back, because what was it, three years ago? The running backs were about to threaten to walk out and to sit out and say, you know what, we're getting screwed here. And finally, it's starting to get the recognition they read. And we're realizing how important they can be to quarterbacks who may not be elite. Boy, they can make a good quarterback an elite quarterback by giving them a great running game.
I've always thought, too, that the most exciting play in football is the running back. It's always been Barry Sanders. It's always been Walter Payton and Eric Dickerson and Gale Sayers and O.J. Simpson. And with Saquon Barkley, we see that. What was the most exciting play from last year? Him hopping backwards over a defender. Danny, I want to be careful here, because this is one of my piping hot takes that I'm gonna try to take some of the temperature out, and I'll deliver it a bit more piping hot when you're not around. But when's the last defensive innovation we've seen? When's the last time? The 85 Bears and the 46 defense and what Buddy Ryan did, and I just Tampa 2 with Tony Dungy or whatever. I just don't see defensive innovation like we used to, and I think part of that is, in order to innovate, you got to be on the practice field. In order to design exotic defenses, you got to practice, you got to see it live, and they've just taken practice away. And this is where I'm taking the temperature down, and you don't have to respond to this, but the hiring practices where we're not leaning into who's the most creative. It's, do they check a quota box? Do we, and on that side of the football, they're trying to install coordinators that check a quota box on that side of the football more than on the other side of the football. I just think there's no defensive innovation, and that might be another reason why the running game is returning so strongly.
I also think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, the pass schemes. Like, when you think of, like, when I face defenses, the thing I was always worried about were exotic blitzes. Like, where are they coming from? And Bill Belichick famously would throw the kitchen sink at you. You didn't know where anybody was coming from, and you had to be ready for almost anything. And I think now, and you know what the best way to counter that is to run the football at them. Because when they're all trying to come from different places, they're trying to disguise, maybe they're coming from the linebacker level or coming for the safety level, they are late to get up to the line of scrimmage. So you have a huge advantage if you can run the football. That's the best way to get team out of blitzes, is to be able to run the football. So I think it kind of goes back to that opportunity. You know, the 46 defense, the Bear defense, that was something that was designed to stop the run. And it was incredible, because they'd get all those guys up on the line of scrimmage. You'd have an eagle front where every single offensive lineman was covered with a defensive lineman. And so there's been things that they've tried. I'd say the last kind of thing that I've seen, and I haven't seen it in a while, was when you sort of had the stand around defense. You know, that one where you didn't label anybody and everybody's kind of just walking around, and all of a sudden they go. But I don't think that's too successful, because you're not even a three-point stance. You talk about being vulnerable to the run game. So I think they'll wrinkle some things in, But I think it's going back to it's still a physical game. And I think that's what's kind of coming back. And we're having a total new appreciation for that. That even the great defenses, sure, you can have all the schemes, but you better be able to match up with an offensive line and go tackle some guys. And tackling is really a lost sport because no one practices tackling anymore. We're so worried about player safety. No one plays in the preseason. And it starts really from the young ages. No one even practices tackle in youth football. So I think you're able to run through a lot of tacklers more so than ever before.
Danny, the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be without Joe Burrow for 3 months. Should they have an interest perhaps in Kirk Cousins? And I say that because you spent all this money on Trey Hendrickson for 1 year. You spent this money on the wide receivers. They'll be around a little bit longer. But I saw a clip, and I wish I had told these guys to get it, but I saw a clip where Jamar Chase, late in that game, gave virtually no effort on one play. I mean, it's just like glaring. They're down 38 points or 30-some-odd points, whatever. I kind of get it, but I hadn't seen. And so this is a team that was built to chase a Super Bowl this year. They came in with that expectation. If they don't have a real solution at quarterback, I think it's going to be hard for these guys to get up every week when hey, Trey Hendrickson's probably out of here next year. If you were the Bengals, would you have an interest in Kirk Cousins?
Yeah, I think he's the best available non-starter right now. I still think, and I think, look at what Aaron Rodgers has been able to do the further he's been removed from his Achilles injury. I mean, the first part of last season, you saw Aaron Rodgers really struggle, but then the back end, he started to get further removed, started playing better, and he's kind of continued that over. I thought Kirk Cousins was really impacted by his Achilles injury, and it's one that takes a long time to come back for, almost 2 years until you're fully healthy. So the only thing I would say they'd have to consider, and it's funny how they always figure out a way around it, is his massive contract they would have to absorb. So the Falcons have already played two weeks of his salary, so I think it comes down to $24 million. And then there's some contract stipulations for next season that they would have to figure out. I think he's the best available. So I would try to see about making that work because I still think he has some good football with him. And he's a guy who he's not Joe Burrow, clearly, but he can make the elite level throws. He's incredibly accurate. He can handle an entire offense. And I think he's an upgrade over Jake Browning. I don't think that's any hot take by any means. So if you want to give yourself the best chance to win, yes. But I wonder if the contract just becomes too prohibitive where they just can't make it work. In that case, I would say go get Jameis. Jameis is somebody who throws the ball without abandon, right? I mean, he's cheap, and he's the Giants. They're going to bench Russ, and they're going to go with Jackson Dart. That leaves Jameis Winston on the outside, just kind of waiting for an opportunity. If you give him those two wide receivers, I think he could put up some numbers. Now, he might throw it to the other team a little bit too, as he's been prone to do. But I'm partial because I've always been a Jameis fan. I think he's been one of the best turnaround stories from the way that people hated him from what had happened at Florida State to all of a sudden become one of the most beloved figures. I think you talk about inspiring a locker room. Every teammate he's ever played for, any stop, they love him. So I would say I would try to go get Jameis because he's cheap, and I think he could actually perform pretty well. The other thing, I think Kirk Cousins might have an opportunity in Atlanta because I'm not so sure Michael Penix is the home run that some people thought he was going to be.
Yeah, that's true. So listen, you got a former, I wouldn't say teammate, but a schoolmate in Deion Sanders that's very upset that you didn't mention Shedeur Sanders as a possibility in Cincinnati. If you're willing to go get Jameis, why not get Shedeur? Hey, I'm joking. Hey, real quick, I want to run a couple of college football things by you, and then I'll let you go. Curt Cignetti and Indiana, 63 points against Illinois. I think that says a lot about Indiana. I do think it says that Illinois was overrated, but this guy can coach. This guy, maybe he's the solution in Alabama if they continue to struggle. I think I looked at their schedule, and if I'm right, they play at Oregon, they play at Penn State, but I don't think Indiana plays Michigan or Ohio State this year. How good is Indiana?
They're legit. Like you said, I think there's probably a combination. I think Illinois was a little bit overrated, and they had a bunch of defensive backs that were down. They lost one in the game, got ejected. And they took advantage of it. Like, to score 63 on another Power 4 team, let alone a Big Ten team that had 10 wins last year and people had high hopes for, that was impressive. I think he's upgraded at quarterback. Fernando Mendoza, if you haven't seen him, he's an absolute stud. Leads the country in quarterback passes. He's 6'5", he's 240, he's mobile. He's got a great mindset after the game. He's crediting all his teammates. And then here's the thing about Curt Cignetti, which I love. He is pissed off about what happened at the end of last year, because he even blamed ESPN. He's like, they almost got left out of the playoffs. There was a significant push. They were 11-1, and they had the loss against Ohio State. They beat Michigan on a down year, and there were a lot of people pounding the table saying they don't belong in. And so then they get in, and then what happened? They lose to Notre Dame, and everybody on national networks was saying, see, they didn't belong. They didn't belong. He took that personally. Like, he really did take that personally. And I think they're playing with an edge. I think that's why they dropped 63. Like, you could have called off the dogs. I think they want to put a stamp on things so that, first, there's no doubt if they're in that playoff conversation about their resume. And then secondly, I think they're here to stay. They've invested a lot of money into the program. He's still got some holdovers from James Madison, and he is a great football coach and a great motivator. This team is for real.
Big game, Oregon, Penn State. Oregon beat them last year, 45-37. Oregon's getting 3.5 points at Penn State. I'm more of a Dan Lanning guy than I am a James Franklin guy. So I kind of expect Oregon to win this. But what do you see here at big game in the college weekend?
This is such a pressure-packed game for James Franklin. He's 1-15 against top 5 opponents. I guess the good news is that the Ducks are ranked number 6, so maybe you have a chance to win this one. He's done, and he just hasn't been able to get over this type of hurdle. You know, they've been kind of consistently churning out 9 or 10 wins, but when they face a team with equal or better personnel, they just have fallen short. And I think there's also a tremendous amount of pressure on their quarterback, Drew Aller, who even early this season has been disappointing. They haven't played anybody, so you wonder, are they just not playing with a sense of urgency? Are they saving things schematically to show for Oregon when they come to town? This is such a huge game because it's at home. You're a favored. You're supposed to win this game. I think this is a huge game for them. And yet, Dan Lanning, another coach who I think is very irritated because they ran the table. They were perfect last year. And then everybody forgot about him because they got blown out against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. And that was ugly. I think he's playing with a little chip on his shoulder. He's angry about that way that unfolded. And Dante Moore, their quarterback, is a young stud. Wait till you see the ball come off his hand. It's his first road game. It's going to be a whiteout. So I know the atmosphere is going to be electric, but he's got a cannon for an arm, and they've got speed all over the place. It all comes down to Penn State. Can they run the football? Like, if they can run the football and impose their will, they've got a chance. But boy, they better watch out. They better have some guys ready to tackle because Oregon's going to come at them with a lot of different weapons on the offensive side of the ball. If they can't run it down your throat, they'll run around you and they'll run by you.
I know it's early in the week. Won't hold you to it, but who do you like?
I would lean towards Oregon in the points. I'm with you. I think this game will be close, but like, who do you trust more? I trust Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. That being said, they haven't done much on the road under Dan Lanning as well. Like, if you go back and look at Lanning's resume, he lost on the road to Washington. Last year they had one good road game, like really weren't tested. They beat Ohio State. That was at home. So that's a big test, but I would say Oregon I trust more because I do have my concerns about Drew Aller and James Franklin in this spot.
Finally, is Kellen DeBoer coaching for his life at Georgia this weekend? I don't think he can afford to lose this.
I think if it's close, he can survive. I think, they could still – I think Alabama's really good. Since they lost to Florida State, they have been annihilating their opponents. Ty Simpson, since that game, all he's done is gone out and completed 89% of his passes, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Granted, it's Louisiana Monroe and it's Wisconsin, but the defense is flying around. I think they got caught. I think they got caught with their pants down a little bit against Florida State, thinking they would waltz in and beat a team that was 2 wins. I think Florida State could be really good this year. They got beat by a mobile quarterback. This is the one where they need to step up. By the way, Tim Keenan, their best defensive player who was out against Florida State, he's back. So I think Alabama is capable of winning. Here's a nugget for you, too. Kirby Smart is 1-6 against Alabama. Now, granted, most of those are against Nick Saban, but he did lose last year in Tuscaloosa to Kalen DeBoer. This is an absolutely massive, massive game. I cannot wait to watch this one. I know you're going to ask me. I'm going to lean towards Bama. I think people are sleeping on Bama. I still think their roster is really, really good. And Gunnar Stockton was good against Tennessee, but I think this defense is going to be a little bit more challenging for them. So I'll take the points. I'll take the 2.5 points, but I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama pulls off the upset.
Danny, tell your Alabama friends that I'm already cooking up my Crimson Pride thumbnail for this weekend's game. I'm anticipating an Alabama loss, and we'll have a Crimson Pride thumbnail for Monday. Thank you, Danny.
You got it, Jason. Have a good one.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, that's Danny Kannell. We got Steve Kim coming around the corner. I want to tell you guys that want some more inspiration for the woman in your life. You want something similar to that feeling that we all got this weekend from the Charlie Kirk Memorial. Allie Beth Stuckey's event in Dallas on October 11th, Share the Arrows, is the perfect trip for the perfect woman in your life or the imperfect woman in your life, whether it's your daughter, your niece, your wife, your sister, your aunt, your grandmama. Send her to Dallas to hang out with Allie Beth and her friends. ShareTheArrows.com. Visit that site, tell you about tickets and details. If you want your woman inspired and coming back more biblically sound and coming back more holy, Allie Beth Stuckey and her crew have you covered. Go to ShareTheArrows.com. Tickets still available. October 11th. You want to be there, or you want the woman in your life there. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. Next. Where do we go from here? And the number one thing that has to happen is repentance being valued and focused on more than reparation. We're at a time that if we're going to fix this problem, this demonic culture, and I'm talking about all of it, this isn't just for black people, but I am putting a little special emphasis on black people because of the topic we're talking about today. But as men, black men in particular, if we're not willing to repent, and we got a lot to repent for, and I'm talking about myself, you got to get on your knees and apologize. And then you have to get up off your knees and do better. Repentance isn't just, hey, I'm sorry. Hey, I did this and I did this and I shouldn't have done that. That's the first step of repentance. But the follow through is to get up off your knees after confessing your sins to God and do better. Never repeat these mistakes.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Listen that I'm back just to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell, joining me now. Steve, I got a runny nose. Not feeling the greatest, but we're soldiering on. Steve, I'm going to have you pick up where Danny left off, just because I know you got some thoughts on this. Oregon at Penn State, Alabama at Georgia. Just, you don't have to spend long, but what's your early thoughts? Who you liking in those two big games?
You know, I was surprised when Oregon is only ranked sixth. I think they're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. Now, the caveat is, haven't played a great schedule. It's all been in Autzen. Now they travel to Penn State. What is the one thing James Franklin has not done? He hasn't won enough big games, even though he's had a good career. I like Oregon. I'm still not a believer in Drew Aller, and he's had some shaky moments. He's one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in the country, given his status. Oregon, to me, is going to make a deeper run into the playoffs than last year because Dante Moore, I believe, has a higher ceiling than Dylan Gabriel. The other game, Danny mentioned the return of Keenan. Alabama also returns Jam Miller, the #1 running back, who did not play against Florida State. But this game is at Athens. So, yeah, I get it. Kirby Smart had a Nick Saban problem. He's on ESPN now. So I think that this is the year that he puts all of that aside. I like Georgia, and I believe they're coming off of a bye week. I like the Dogs to hold serve at home.
Fine. One more little warm up before I get to the topics I told you about. Dan Campbell, if my memory serves me right, you've been on the Dan Campbell bandwagon from the get go, and he certainly is put himself in the candidate of best coaches without a Super Bowl. I think last night going to Baltimore and really handling them pretty well, quite a statement. Their running game. Again, I'm not a Jared Goff guy. I think he'll blow up in their face at some point, but I'll never not give Dan Campbell credit. He's built something that's big. He and Brad Holmes have built something there that's bigger and more sustainable than just the two coordinators. But your thoughts on last night's game?
Oh, Dan Campbell, America's coach. And, I almost fell off my chair listening to you as you gave him credit. Also, now he can coach, huh? So now you're a believer. Welcome aboard. I'm just going to slide over here. Plenty of room here on the Dan Campbell bandwagon, the Danimal. Look, I had my doubts after week one, but week one is a mirage. Now, we're still not into October. But, Jason, I think the biggest development last night was that the interior of the Lions' offensive line, the two guards and a center, they shifted a lot of things. They got some younger players. They grew up. I get it. Baltimore doesn't have a Lodi Nada and the Goose and Sam Adams. But to put together two 90-yard drives in that environment and run the ball inside, because that's the basis and the foundation of their offense, because now you can run play action and all that fancy stuff. But you're right. Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and Sheila Fordham, they have built a real culture. And you look at the actual roster, which they've switched a little bit. It's still very, very talented. And Dan Campbell has shown that the old school way of coaching, and you meld it, you evolve a little bit. Dan Campbell's here to stay, and I'm glad you're on the bandwagon. It took you a while, but welcome aboard. You're good.
Look, I love the style of play. I love the fact that they ran the ball 30-some-odd times, put Lamar on the sidelines, and just kind of took the game away from Baltimore. Just didn't give them enough time on the field. I love the teams with the strong running game, and Detroit's got one of the best ones. And, yeah, the interior of the offensive line has improved, but that team is built around those offensive tackles, and eventually they just wore out Baltimore. Baltimore started well against the run, and then eventually Detroit just caught up with them. It was impressive to watch. Steve, I want to move to go ahead.
Yeah, one last thing. Keep this in mind about Detroit. Their defense last year was decimated by injuries, and they only had Aiden Hutchinson for about 6 games. That's a guy that he looks like the Aiden Hutchinson of old or new, and if they are consistently able to score points and play from ahead, Aiden Hutchinson once again is going to have another monster all-pro year. I don't think that was talked about. Then Aleem McNeil, who's having a Pro Bowl year inside, he got injured. So I know a lot of people have doubts about their defense. I still don't think their secondary is really that great. But if those two guys, especially Hutch, can stay healthy, they're going to be a player again in the NFC.
What the defense has the advantage of, the offense of the opposition is so panicked about, hey, how many opportunities we want to get? Because that Detroit offense is going to come out here and run the ball down our throat. And so they end up making some panic moves. The pressure gets to them. And it's an opportunistic defense. They know that they're not that great. That's why they punch the ball out. And I'll say this about Aiden Hutchinson. He had a very good fourth quarter, but he's a year away from being really all the way back. He punched out the football, then he got a big sack, and that's all great. But it'll be another year before he's back to who he really is. But that still may be good enough. Let me move on. Something very interesting happened in the media space, also in college coaching. Bruce Pearl steps down, retires as the head basketball coach at Auburn, names his son his successor. Mike Wibon irritated a lot of people on social media and kind of surprised people with his take on, pardon the interruption, about Bruce Pearl. Let's play the clip and then we'll react.
Happy trails to coaching for Bruce Pearl. The Auburn coach is stepping down to become an ambassador for the athletic department. In his place, the school gave a 5-year deal to his son, Steven. Pearl is 65. He has had terrific teams at Milwaukee, Tennessee, and Auburn, which made the Final Four last season and in 2019. His decision comes about a year after Tony Bennett did the same thing at UVA. Pearl said he will not run for the U.S. Senate, something that had been rumored.
Tony, he become a divisive person, it seems to me, intentionally, and I hope there was pressure to just get him out.
Really?
Yeah,
I always liked him. He was such a great guest. Yeah, we're on the other side on him.
Steve, that kind of shocked me. If he had said, hey, he had become a divisive force, I would, okay, Bruce Pearl's leading with his politics, and, you know, he's real out front with his conservative views and being a Zionist and all that. And if Mike wants to call that divisive, that's fine. But then I think what really triggered people is when he said, I hope he was forced out. I don't know if people could understand that one. Your thoughts?
I think it's interesting that as long as you agree with someone politically or culturally, you are encouraged to use your platform to amplify the message, right? But the minute you don't agree with it, you're divisive, and there's no room for it in sports. I think both sides are guilty of this. But I have a question for Wibon. So was Colin Kaepernick divisive? And did he do so intentionally? And isn't it good then maybe he was forced out or did it himself? I think Wibon's being a bit of a crybaby, but I don't really expect much different. Honestly, people always say, I respect your opinion. I think that's the biggest lie in modern day culture. They will respect and accept your opinion if they agree with it. I don't think there's an honest discourse anymore, and Wibon's reaction showed that. But again, I have a question to Wibon. Do you want these athletes and coaches to use their platform, or is it only to use their platform when you agree or align with them? That's the question that I have.
Here's what surprised me about Wibon's opinion here is obviously Wibon has been close with Charles Barkley for a long time. Charles Barkley played basketball at Auburn. Charles Barkley is a big supporter of Bruce Pearl. So what is Wibon saying here? Does he know something from Barkley that maybe we don't know? Is he, it just seemed, it could just be politics. Bruce Pearl is right wing, I guess, but I don't know. The whole thing just caught me by surprise, and I understand why people are like, man, and you hope that he got pushed out? It's like, has Bruce Pearl... Now, I do think there's something, and Hadley, see if you can help me out, help me remember this. I saw it last night, but now I've forgotten it. But something went on, I think, maybe at the University of Illinois with Bruce Pearl, where Illinois fans are upset with Bruce Pearl and feel like he's some sort of snitch, maybe.
Oh, Jason, if I recall, that had to do over the recruitment of a player, a center by the name of Deion Thomas, and he broke the rules of recruiting by snitching and basically turning in Lou Henson. I guess with all that cheating, you're not allowed to report it on... Yeah, talk about honor system that's a little bit broken. Jason, what I also find interesting is a lot of these pundits, you know which ones, the usual suspects. I'm just glad he's not coaching black players anymore. It's always about the black players. Well, you know who had no problems with Bruce Pearl coaching black players, ironically enough? The black players that actually played for Bruce Pearl. In fact, judging by the fact, and I didn't watch a lot of college basketball, but I'm assuming that if they made the Final Four, they must have had a lot of black players. Okay, this was not modern-day Adolph Rupp here. Okay, he didn't do it with a bunch of white guys. I'm assuming in the SEC, if you want to compete, I'll be honest, you got to have black players. In fact, you can have one or two white guys, a couple Europeans, maybe an Asian walk-on that never plays. But it's always interesting about, we got to look out for the young black players. Right, the ones that have been signing up to play for Bruce Pearl for decades.
I'm bending over backwards here. Obviously, I have a lot of respect for Mike. Obviously, me and Tony love Tony Kornheiser, love Mike. I'm bending over backwards trying to figure out what's going on here, but I'm lost for an explanation other than Bruce Pearl is right wing, and as a black person in the media, you have to be against those people, and you have to think they're the worst people on the planet and deserve to lose their job. I don't get it, but I'm not in Mike's shoes. I don't know what the pressure's like over at ESPN for on-air black employees. If you ask Sage Steele, it's pretty rough.
Yes.
So we'll keep it moving. Steve, Jon Gruden takes a shot here at Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson. And Jon Gruden's over at Barstool Sports. He's there, I think, talking with Dave Portnoy and maybe Greg Olson.
Yes.
But he's making his thoughts clear that he's got a problem with Belichick. He's got a problem with Michael Lombardi. Anyway, let's play the clip.
So, Coach, here's the thing. I followed the Patriots, and this was the ultimate no distraction guy. Don't talk to the media. Don't do anything that gets the people talking. Well, they're talking, and they're losing by 30. Have you ever had, and we've met your lovely wife, you have her drawing whiteboard plays. Has she ever been on the sidelines before a game?
Well, actually, she called the game winner against the Ravens on Monday Night Football a couple years ago. She came down on the field and helped me through a tough situation. It was an all-out blitz, and she told me to go with 58 Surge. So thank God she saved the day that day. But I've never seen anything like that. Mike Lombardi works for North Carolina. I've heard him criticize me several times. I'm sure he'll produce a TikTok today explaining exactly what was going on there.
Woo! Bill Belichick has made a fool of himself. His peers are mocking him for what it makes no sense. She was on the field before the game. What is he doing? And is Jon Gruden out of bounds here?
No, and also he made a fool out of UNC. I don't think they're getting all this. I think they're getting the Patriot way. And Jason, I want to make this clear, something I've said for months as we've talked about this. If that relationship was basically kept private, right, and all this other stuff did not happen throughout the offseason and her coming on the field before a game, we would just say that is a private adult relationship. Now, after what happened in the opening night game against TCU, where she was out there during warm-ups, engaging the temperature of the room, you would think Belichick and everyone else would say, honey, let's talk in the locker room or the bowels of the stadium, and I'll see you after the game. But as soon as I'm getting on the field to coach my team and prepare for battle, I don't want you around. I think then at that point you're good. But to repeat that mistake, and here's the other thing, and I like Mike Lombardi. I just recently bought his book, really enjoyed it. They acted like they had all the answers. Okay, now they're living in a glass house. In fact, they took a shot at Miami and Mario Cristobal. Mike Lombardi said, oh, look at Miami buying what have they won? They haven't. Oh, really, Mike? How's your team doing? You brought in a lot of players. You bought some guys. How are you looking? Right? So, again, it's one thing to do this and act this way when you're competing for Lombardi trophies. Right now, they look like a bad ACC team. And Jason, I've been watching some North Carolina football podcasts, guys who love the program, graduates and fans. The honeymoon is over. And guys that have to cover that team, I actually think they want this thing to end immediately. They're done with this. Wow.
Next thing you'll be telling me is Lawrence Taylor is off the Bill Belichick bandwagon after LT played at North Carolina. Steve, I'm going to keep it moving because I beat up Bill Belichick enough. Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders, is he making a smart move here? I think he was, whose podcast was he on? New Heights. Yeah, he was on with the Kelsey brothers, or one of the Kelseys. And he's predicting that Shador will start a game or two this year for the Cleveland Browns. Let's play the clip.
Have you been keeping up with Shedeur in Cleveland? What's the best piece of advice you've given him as a dad and as a coach?
Be patient and be ready. You got to be ready when it's time. But when it's time, you're going to know. And it's coming up.
There we go.
You know, I got a prediction. I ain't telling nobody. I got a feeling when it's going to go down. But it's going to go down this year.
It's going to happen. All right.
Yeah, he going to get a shot.
And that's all you can ask for as a player. All you can ask for is the opportunity, right?
Tell me this, because this was all over the media, because I know y'all keep it a buck. That's why I love y'all to life.
Yes.
They made a big deal out of Philly called us on draft day.
Okay.
They didn't mention that. I just let a cat out of the bag.
I didn't know that. Yeah, okay.
Who was it? Baltimore. And the Browns. And the Browns. They forget, I know, I played for Baltimore, so me and Ozzie are cool. So we understood that whole conversation, and he wanted to talk to Shedeur as well as he wanted to talk to me. And I put Shedeur on the phone, and Shedeur, I don't want to say how it went, but how in the world can somebody fault him for saying or thinking, why in the world would I go back up Lamar for 10 more years?
For sure.
I've never sat on the bench and said, well, I learned a lot today.
That is a great quote. Goddamn, that is a good quote.
No, it's actually not, but I get it. Ozzie Newsome, he's not still running the Baltimore Ravens, is he? Maybe he's got some ceremonial role, but he's maybe he did call. I don't know, but why would you, when you put it in the air, hey, look, I got a prediction, his time is going to come this year, or he's going to get a shot this year. They just beat the Packers. Joe Flacco's their starting quarterback. What? Deion has basically said, hey, Joe Flacco's going to play bad and get benched. Joe Flacco's going to get injured. The Browns are going to suck, and Shedeur is going to have to play. And not only is just behind Joe Flacco, he's behind Dylan Gabriel. What's Deion doing here other than drawing attention to himself?
Jay, so you know everybody, guys like you and I have said that there's a reason why you don't want this whole Sanders dynamic in your organization. That interview right there is another example of it. And by the way, I didn't listen to the whole quote yesterday, but okay, so I listened to that part. Well, I've never learned anything sitting on the bench. So I have a question since he's now a coach. Juju Lewis was considered one of the very best high school quarterbacks in the country, right? I'm assuming he felt like, hey, I'm going to compete for the job here, right? I'm going to play a lot right off the bat. So what does he tell Juju Lewis right now? Who's basically the third string quarterback learning on the bench, but I mean, as he should as a true freshman. So here's the reality. So Joe Flacco is the starter. Dylan Gabriel is the number 2. So you not only need one benching or an injury, you need 2. I don't get this. But again, that interview right there in the tenor of it is exactly why a lot of teams had them off the board. And
anyway, here's Deion. Deion and Bill Belichick, two guys I beat up a lot. I'm almost out of virtually everything they do is the opposite of what I think should be done. These guys have lost their mind. I don't understand. What are you doing? Hey, great, you beat Wyoming, but you're 2-2. You got your own problems. Focus on Colorado. Don't stir any more drama with the Cleveland Browns or your son. But I'm going to move on to something I want to spend a bit more time on because I find this fascinating. Keith Olbermann, the former famous ESPN broadcaster, former famous political pontificator, is now has so much Trump derangement, maybe the worst case of Trump derangement we have in America, that he's actually making threats at Scott Jennings, the CNN broadcaster. He posted on X at Scott Jennings, the conservative broadcaster over at CNN that puts clown suits on Abby Phillips and her gang of black queens on a nightly basis. Keith Olbermann, you're next, MFer, but keep mugging to the camera. He's making a threat at Scott Jennings, and then Scott Jennings, in his response, copied Kash Patel on this deal. And I don't blame Scott Jennings because Olbermann is setting a tone out there that, like, hey, Scott Jennings is worthy of death because I disagree with him because he's conservative. I didn't think it could get any worse for Keith Olbermann, but it is, and he actually needs help. I mean, real help. Someone needs to do a mental health check on Keith Olbermann and give him some additional help.
Jason, I will promise you one thing about that threat. Keith Olbermann will not drive over himself and do it. He's always been this odd guy. We're talking about a guy his age, never driven a car, doesn't have a drive. He's kind of strange. And you have to understand, being an LA native my whole life, I've grown up watching every stage of his career. He was originally a very witty, acerbic sports anchor for KTLA Channel 5, and then he moved up the ladder. And I always thought, man, this is a highly intelligent individual. Now he's just become deranged. And I don't have an issue with his political beliefs. I really don't. We have to be honest about this. We're not going to agree with everybody. But the extreme that he takes it now to a point of basically, I don't even know if it's a veiled threat. It seemed like a threat, not from him, but almost an invitation for someone else to do it, because you are talking about tone and tenor within our current climate in America. It's almost like he's saying, please, someone do this. Now, I believe Keith Olbermann deleted those tweets. I'm glad that everyone has screenshot them for posterity. I think that needs to happen. But Keith Olbermann, I think, has been a sad, sad descent. I know this much about him. Every place he's gone, he's burned bridges, and nobody really wants him back all that much.
So walk me all the way back to his days in L.A.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, in retrospect, not in real time, but in retrospect, you look back and say, oh, there were signs that this guy was Cocoa for Cocoa Puffs?
No.
That
Jason, I can honestly tell you, growing up as a kid, he was a guy that I liked because he'd actually run like features on trading cards. Like, hey, this is the hottest card, collect this. And he had a great mind. Very, very intelligent. He could recite stats. And then his post-game show, because he went from KTLA Channel 5, which was a local network, to the local CBS affiliate. And then he took off nationally. But he would do these post-game shows, and you could tell that probably a guy that didn't play the game, but there was a bit of a Cosell-esque nature to him. He did unbelievable commentaries. He'd make sharp comments, wasn't afraid to take on the big guys. It was actually very admirable. But at the same time, Jason, in this era, which was mid-'80s to about mid-'90s, before he went over to ESPN with Dan Patrick, where he became iconic nationally, I didn't really have an inkling of his political leanings at all. Now, again, I'm very young. I didn't care about that stuff. Only thing I read in the sports page was the box scores and the comics, basically, out of the LA Times. But I never got an inkling in those days that he had a leaning Republican or Democrat at all, to be fair.
So when he moves over into the political arena for MSNBC, he seemed like the kind of normal left-wing lunatic. Didn't scare you, but it's like,
Right.
man, he's really hates George W. Bush, and he thinks, George W. Bush is the worst thing in the world. But I don't know when I thought that this was a possibility, because I can remember, Steve, remember when he came back to ESPN after
Yes.
the MSNBC deal?
I remember that.
I was the first guest on his Olbermann show.
What?
I was out there. Yes, I was the first guest. There's a picture of me in this blue jean sport coat sitting across from Keith Olbermann. It was either me or Mark Cuban. It was me and Mark Cuban that were the guest on the show. I can't remember who went first or who went second, but I just remember being there. This was a big deal for ESPN. Keith Olbermann is back, and we're celebrating. We're going to place two provocative, smart people in the sports world with him, Mark Cuban and Jason Whitlock. I had no idea, because you do know, like, he took a shot at me this weekend as well over Twitter. Yeah. Calling me brainwashed, or said I don't have a brain to be washed, or whatever. But even at MSNBC, I didn't think this was a possibility.
Well, he's been radicalized. It's one thing to be passionate, but to be radicalized, I mean, look, if he was a female, he'd be Rosie O'Donnell. I mean, they're basically the same thing. Let me guess, on your appearance on that Keith Olbermann show, which I actually enjoyed, by the way, I'm going to admit it, I actually thought it was very provocative. You guys probably did not discuss your 2007 NBA All-Star Game column. That's my guess. And if you did, I'm going to punch up that episode on YouTube right now, by the way. But I want to let you know about that column. I was at dinner at Phil Trainey's last week. We had about a 45-minute discussion on that article. I wish I would have taped it. I think you would have thoroughly enjoyed, because I know people that were there that weekend, and they would tell you everything you wrote was absolutely spot on. But to go back to Olbermann, yes, he has become radicalized, and he is an individual whose politics have become his religion.
And so if he has been radicalized, I think we have to blame social media for it. I think this guy lives his entire life on X or Blue Sky, probably a lot of time on Blue Sky, and that's what's radicalized him. This was someone that's made millions upon millions of dollars, was taken very seriously. But because I think even leftists probably have moved away from Keith Olbermann, because, I mean, this guy could legitimately go postal. I think at this point, if Keith Olbermann did something to harm himself or someone else, I don't think anybody would be surprised.
Yeah, well, lucky for us, though, us normal people, he probably just sequesters himself in some gentrified part of New York where, ironically, he probably nenever has to deal with any person that's a minority. That's the ironic thing about these guys. As much as they stand up for these people, they don't want to be around them. There's an unfortunate and uncomfortable reality to a lot of these people. But Keith Olbermann, it is a sad descent. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not even so sure this is rock bottom for him.
Yeah, neither do I. We'll end the show here. We'll land the airplane. Jimmy Kimmel has been reinstated, Steve, by ABC. Not everybody's on board with this. I think Nexstar and Sinclair are talking about they're still not going to air Jimmy Kimmel. Are you surprised that he's been reinstated?
No, given the fact that it's ABC/Disney, I'm actually surprised they took the steps to ever suspend it. And once they said indefinite, I mean, Jason, that could mean 1 day, or that could be 1 year, or forever. I mean, that's a very open-ended way of putting things. They never actually put a number on it. I am going to be curious, but I'm not going to watch, or I'll probably catch the clips, on what the tenor of the show is going to be, if he lightens up or if he does not. But I do find it interesting that those two entities have flat out said, you can bring him back all you want, we're not airing it. I think that's a significant move.
Yeah, Steve, I think that's all I want to do. I think that's all I got. I think that's all my nose is going to allow. Thank you so much. Great job as always, Steve Kim. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I did the best that I could, and I think it was pretty dang good, particularly with whatever's going on with my sinuses. We'll play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all this moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna be, I just want, I wanna be, I just want, I wanna be, I just